we are back. This is ComingSoonJesus.org, News Media One. We are here with Jim Weeks, the visionary behind Reaching Beyond the Fence. Thank you, man, for inviting us and letting us be here. Thank you for letting us sponsor you too, man. We really love you guys. What this ministry does for people who are behind bars is amazing. But the vision came from a very personal place for you.
Well, first of all, I'm not the visionary. He is.
Amen.
I'm just the vessel being used.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's very personal to me.
Yeah. So let's start with what happened. How did you end up behind bars?
Well, when I was 16, I was kicked out of a Christian school because my mom got behind in payments. And I thought if money meant more than a child's education, I didn't want to be a Christian. So, I became an alcoholic. I was in a bar one night. A girl I used to date was lap dancing for me. And I was masturbating her. There was an undercover cop in the bar and brought charges against us, and I got charged for aggravated sexual assault. And went away for 15 years. Shortly 3 months before going in, I rededicated my life to the Lord and was baptized. I stopped drinking, about a year before I went in, after all this happened, because I decided that was not what I needed. My way wasn't working. The pastor came and saw me a few times, wrote me a couple times. Then all of a sudden he dropped off. And it was almost like deja vu, and I was on the verge of giving up when somebody gave me a brochure for a prison fellowship and a pen pal program they had. And it took a lot for me to fill out that brochure because it asked what my charge was, and I was ashamed of that. But I stepped out on faith and I did it. And July 25th, 2003, I received a letter from a lady in Ohio, Miss Jean Cato. And she faithfully wrote me. That restored my faith. I knew then that God was with me, and He was going to see me through this. And He did.
You felt that love. Now, I know that had to be strange because you go from this shame to feeling this love, and I can only imagine, first of all, the humiliation of being behind bars and then having to say why you were behind bars. But then for this blast of light to come through all of that darkness, it's like, is this for real? Now, I want to take a step back because you had already felt rejected, like Christianity just was nonsense because, like I said, your mom got behind on payments. And so that rejection led you down this what happened? Did you just feel like nothing mattered anymore?
No, I just felt that, if being a Christian meant money was more important than the child's education, then I didn't want to be a part of it.
And then
it was like, they don't care about me as an individual because they could care less whether I get my education. And so I was
everything else was there. The alcohol was there. The partying started.
I started hanging around the wrong crowd, the wrong people, started drinking, become an alcoholic, and was an alcoholic for 16 years.
Wow. Yeah. So there was already like a war for your soul already kind of started just from that. And then you end up behind bars. Now, did you feel like you were abandoned?
Yeah, because 95% of my family and all those people I thought were friends just quit writing. They didn't even, half of them didn't even write me to start with. It's like,
Wow.
you're in prison. I don't want my name or address associated with that. You know, you're worthless. You mean nothing to me. You know, that's kind of the way I felt with all of them. It's almost like
Wow.
when you're on the outside and you're hanging around these people, it's what can you do for me? Yeah, you're my buddy because you can buy a beer tonight because I ain't got no money, you know? But then once you get behind bars, you can't do nothing for me. What do I need to write you for? And so they just move on with their life and just forget about you.
That's a pretty hard interpretation. That's a pretty hard interpretation because no matter how you look at it, that's what it is. It's bigger than out of sight, out of mind. It's like you're no more, because you're behind bars, you're not valuable to me anymore. And you saw that reality from the other side. And then you have this stranger come out of nowhere. Once you signed for the prison ministry, the stranger comes out of nowhere and writes you. What is that first letter? What did that feel like? That first letter feel like?
It was kind of like when I was baptized, because I have a phobia of going underwater, and I had all these visions of pulling the pastor under and everything else, you know. But when my foot touched that water, there was a calm peace come over me. And when I got that letter, again, I felt that calm peace. It was like, you're being accepted. Someone cares about you. They don't know you, but they care about you.
Wow.
You know, and when I got that letter, I wrote back, and it just continued. As the years went on, you know, she started not only writing me letters, but she also started sending photos of her husband and her daughter and son and grandkids. And I actually got to see her grandkids grow up through photographs. I felt like part of her family, you know, and so it went from just being a pen pal to being family.
Yeah.
You know.
Now, when you started to realize that this was for real, that someone really cared about you, did you start feeling more hopeful? You know what I mean? And did you start feeling like, okay, things are gonna be all right? Like, or was it still a struggle with the fact that you're there because you're physically there? You know, what did it do for you?
Well, I mean, when you sit around and you hear them do mail call and everybody's getting mail but you, and then all of a sudden they're calling your name too.
Wow.
You know, it just means so much to you.
That is huge right there. That's a huge statement you just said right there. Like, I can't imagine, you know, hearing everyone else getting mail and then not you. You know what I mean? Wow.
Well, back when you were a kid in school and they're picking teams.
Yeah.
Were you ever the last one to be picked?
I was terrible at basketball. They would never pick me.
Well, I mean, that's what it's like.
Yeah.
They call mail. Everybody's called but you.
Wow.
I mean, that's the closest I can give you to as a comparison.
Yeah.
But when you start getting those letters, it's like, you know, people start looking at you like somebody cares about you out there. You know,
Right.
and they look at you in a different aspect. But it inspired me and let me know that God still loved me, God still accepted me.
Yeah.
And when I left Wallens Ridge, where I was at the time, and moved to Buckingham, I got involved with a prison ministry there called Kairos. And it was through Kairos that I made a forgiveness call home. And it was probably the hardest call I ever made. Called home and I asked my mom and dad both for forgiveness.
No, why did you do that?
For one, for being in there, for the disgrace and disrespect I brought upon the family.
And that's one of the things I think that's so amazing about you is how you own what you did. You own your actions, but you also accept the love that you didn't like just own it and then define yourself by what you did. You allowed the love of God to come in and grow you past what happened, and I think that's one of the most amazing things about you is how you cling to love, and I think that's amazing.
Well, the Lord brings us through things so that He can use that, and I truly believe that. We have one gentleman who signed up for the ministry. We assigned him a pen pal, and he had lied about his age.
Yeah.
And he also said he was in for credit card fraud, and we found out later when she said, this doesn't seem like a 20-year-old writing. And so I investigated and found out that he's 46 and that he was caught in the process of a rape. And because of the rules and so forth that we've set forth in the ministry, we cut off ties between the two of them, and I wrote him a letter and explained the situation. We are here to love you and to show God's love to you.
Right.
We are not here to judge you. And he kind of wrote a letter back that was kind of hateful at first, and he apologized, but there was no remorse in it.
Right.
And I had the opportunity the past couple months to minister to him. But had I not went through what I did and now be on the sex offender registry, I would not be able to connect with him on the level that I did.
Right.
And this gentleman has now resubmitted a new application. He has owned what he's done. He's wrote me a letter, to share to our volunteers, at our appreciation dinner. It's like full circle from where he was.
Well, because you gotta think about the fact that when you recognize that you've done something so terrible, and people want to know what you did or want to know why you did it. It's like I guess it's kind of the same thing that people do on the outside. They try to justify, well, let me think of something that's bad, but not as bad as this. And they try to justify it, but you called him out on it, and you didn't judge him. You called him out on it to let him know that there's no point in lying, because this is about a special type of love. This is about love, and this is about not judging you. And in a way, he kind of judged the ministry. Yeah. In a way, he judged the ministry, expecting you guys.
He judged the world in general.
Right. Expecting people to look down. He didn't realize that God was really showing him this amazing love, saying, hey, we know what you've done, and you need to come out and do that. You didn't like take the ministry away from him.
Yeah.
You just wanted him to come in honesty. And that's a powerful thing. Now, when you called your parents to apologize, what was going through your mind?
Well, I thought about all the verbal abuse I used to deal with from my dad. I thought about how when my mom would discipline us, it would turn into physical abuse. And I knew I needed to forgive them for that in order to move on. But I also needed to ask their forgiveness for what I had done, the shame, humiliation that I brought upon the family. Because until I owned what I did, I gave forgiveness and accepted or asked for forgiveness, I could not receive that forgiveness, and I could not move on.
Right.
And it was by the power of God that my father and I have a relationship now that we never had before.
Right.
Since being home, we go out to dinner, lunch, and so forth. Where before we really didn't do that. If it wasn't working on an old car, we didn't do nothing.
Right.
It was like that was a common bond, an old car. Where now it's actually spending time together.
Yeah. And it's amazing, because at the core of everything that I hear you say, there's this desire for solid relationship. There's this desire to genuinely be loved. And back with the school situation, do you really feel like that it was connected or to that? Like, you really believe that it was connected to that rejection that you faced with the school? Because that's being kicked out of a Christian school is a big deal, especially when it has to do with money. And I can imagine. How old were you? About 16, 17?
I was 16.
16 years old. The interpretation of that was money is more valuable than me, and that really hit you hard.
Well, in the state of Virginia, at the age of 16, you can legally quit school. So the school board couldn't do anything to get my records, but They were able to get my sisters and get her back in school. So I just felt hopeless, and so I started hanging around some wrong people and found that by drinking I could forget about that and move past it, and when I sobered up it was still there, so I'd drink some more.
Wow.
And one drink led to another.
Let me ask you this, because I think this is very important. When the letters came through, I know that did the letters keep you focused in prison, like away? Because the same bad people and bad things that are on the outside are on the inside of prison as well.
Oh, yeah.
Did that keep you away from a lot of the negativity, like the letters and writing?
Well, it's just that positive influence.
Wow.
Helped keep me focused. I was involved with the church on the inside. The Lord used me to establish, a setup crew at St. Bride's, which we didn't have. He used me to establish an usher board that we didn't have, because when I arrived there was only 400 inmates, and we had about 32 that came to church. And then about 6 months later, the population increased to 1,200. And so our church grew to, before I left, it was over 200 attending.
Wow. And
so therefore, there was a lot of things that really needed to be put in play for us to have a functioning church properly. And the situation with the usher board, the way that come about was when we were doing communion, the chaplain asked for some volunteers to come up and pass the emblems, and that really grieved my soul. And I went to him the next day and I said, Pastor, you don't know their walk. How can you just have anybody come up and pass out something so sacred? And he was like, well, you're my head usher. Put together an usher board.
He just put you in.
I was like, huh? Talking about smacking across the face.
Right.
But I see, how the Lord puts us in positions. Looking back, it's all the little did I knows.
Yeah, it's funny because even out in the community, when people see the Coming Soon Jesus shirts, they say, "Oh, you support Reaching Beyond the Fence." You know what I mean? And I'm like, "Wow, Jim." And they a lot of them, people that I didn't even know had ever been incarcerated have been incarcerated, and they speak so highly of you because of the amount of favor that you gained and the man of God that you are. I mean, the person that even gave me the number to contact you in the first place, he was like, you have to meet this guy. He is the real thing. He really loves God. And I think that's one of the things that I'm so impressed by, is that while you were there, you didn't just waste your time. You really sought after God for real. And a lot of people get that prison faith where as soon as they get out, they let God go. But you have been, since you've gotten out, you've been just on the run for God. Now, what's interesting is this artwork, and the things that you've done for the Reaching Beyond the Fence t-shirts. That's the artwork a lot of that artwork, and even the artwork you use for your ministry, that artwork you created when you were inside.
Well, the artwork we use on our t-shirts was actually drawn by one of the inmates who's currently part of the ministry.
Wow.
The other artwork that's on our brochures and so forth are stuff that I drew, when I was on the inside. But in 2007, I wrote a letter to a lot of those so-called friends and family, or a poem, I should say, and just kind of feeling saying what I felt. And that poem is on our website. And 2010, I was taking a graphics class. Had never used a computer in my life. Teacher tells me to log in. I'm sitting there wiggling the mouse trying to get the thing to come on. I didn't know you're supposed to hit the power button.
Right.
Because I didn't know where it was. But as I began to teach myself with the computer and the graphic class, I took that poem. My first class project was a trifold brochure. And I put that thing together based on remembrance of what I had filled out.
Wow.
And the name Reaching Beyond the Fence came to me, and I put it on
2010?
there. In 2010.
Wow.
As little did I know in 2007 that poem I wrote was going to be on the front of a brochure in 2010. Little did I know that brochure I made in 2010 was going to become a ministry in 2016.
Yeah.
You know, it's all these little did I knows.
Yeah.
When I received my information from the school or from the prison, I saw that brochure and I didn't like seeing the old address on there.
Right.
That I had stuck on there, and it was like that doesn't work, you know. And so I put P.O. Box 3672 on it.
What is the significance of that?
It's just a number that came to me that day. You know, I've never heard God speak audible to me, but I've learned to listen to that small voice in my soul, my spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the number that spoke to me. And I put it on there. And it was the next day I was at work, and a friend of mine called and said, "Hey, I need a ride to work. I missed the bus. I don't have money for the cab." And I went and picked her up. She works right around the corner from the post office. And I went in and applied for a post office box. And they assigned us P.O. Box 3672. That was confirmation right there to me that I was supposed to move forward with this.
And you had already had it on the...
All I had at that moment was a brochure I made 6 years ago.
And it was on that. That's amazing.
So I went home and I prayed and just trusted in the Lord to give me the wording that I would need to make all the forms that we were going to need, the other, brochure for the residents on the inside, and it's just a lot just happened in 2 months before I introduced it to the pastor.
Yeah.
And he introduced it to the elders, and they told me, this is an answered prayer. We've been praying to start a prison ministry, but just didn't know where to begin.
Vision for it. Yeah. Now, I do want to say this too, people. If you're looking for a ministry that you're trying to find your place. Maybe you're not a pastor. Maybe you're not, even an evangelist. If you're trying to find something significant that can impact people's lives, being a pen pal, obviously, and you're looking at a testimony right here that shows that if you just take the time to write a letter to someone to show them that you care, that you're praying for them, that can change someone's lives. Now, you know the statistics on what the return rate is if people have a pen pal. What is that?
Studies have shown that an inmate who has a pen pal, just that positive influence in their life, lowers their recidivism rate by 8%.
Right, and that's huge. That's huge because a lot of times people who already don't feel cared about, they come back out, they get released, and then they feel like that's their community. They'll do something just to go back sometimes, or sometimes they just don't know how to respond. But because you experienced that love, it really did bring you back into a healthy reality where you didn't want to go back. You want to operate in the love of God, and it changed your life in a profound way. And I think that like you guys are witnessing the importance of first of all, the power, not just the importance, but the power of what a simple letter can do. And how many? Do you know how many letters between you guys were written?
There was 113 letters written by each of us in the course of 12 and a half years.
113 letters. Consistently, like over 12 years.
The 113th letter from her was the first letter that I received when I hit the streets.
Wow.
It was at the house waiting on me.
Wow. Wow. Well, we're going to come back and we're going to actually have the family that his pen pal family, they're actually here, and we're going to talk about, the connection that they had and why this happened. So we'll be right back.